Frozen reckoning. When the apocalypse came, I didn't die from the cold. I didn't die from hunger. I died screaming at the hands of the neighbors I had fed, betrayed by the very compassion that once defined me. This time around, I'll be enjoying hot meals and roaring fires while they claw at each other's throats in the frozen dark. This time, mercy is a luxury I cannot afford. Please, just make it quick, I begged, my voice cracking like splintered ice. Blood pooled beneath me, steaming in the sub-zero air. I could feel my body shutting down, systems failing one by one. The cold didn't hurt anymore. Nothing hurt anymore. It's so cold, I whispered through shattered teeth. When I die, at least I won't rot. A bitter laugh. Dark humor in my final moments. At least my corpse would keep well. Ach, I bolted upright in bed, gasping like I'd surfaced from drowning. My hands flew to my throat, whole, unbroken. My chest, no gaping wounds. The sheets beneath me were drenched, but with sweat, not blood. No bone-deep cold gnawing at my marrow. No hunger eating me from the inside out. No cruel faces looming over me with kitchen knives and desperate eyes. No blood painting the floor red against pristine white snow. I was in my own bed. My old bed, in my old apartment. Alive. My hands trembled violently as I grabbed my phone, the screen's glow harsh in the darkness. September 27th, 3:30 a.m. 25 days since fate had torn me from death's grip and thrust me back into the living world. 5 days until the freeze that would end everything. 5 days until the world as we knew it would die. Yes, I had died once before. Died badly, slowly, at the hands of people who had smiled at me in hallways, who had borrowed sugar and returned empty containers, who had called me Sweet Mia right up until the moment they decided I was more valuable as meat than as a neighbor. Killed by my own foolish, stupid, suicidal kindness. Never again. The summer of 2022 had arrived like a punishment from hell itself. Record-breaking heat waves scorched the earth. Temperatures soared past 110 farads day after hellish day. The power grid, strained beyond capacity, collapsed in rolling blackouts that left millions sweltering in the dark. The elderly died in their apartments. Children fainted on playgrounds. The news showed images of highways buckling, of rails warping, of a world melting under an angry Sunday. Then, like a miracle, the cool weather arrived. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief. Finally, mercy. Finally, respite from the brutal heat. But the temperatures kept dropping. The pleasant coolness became a creeping chill. The chill became cold. The cold became bitter. And then the snow began to fall. And fall. And fall. And fall. It fell for 3 days straight without stopping. Fat, heavy flakes that blotted out the sun and buried the world in white silence. When it finally stopped, the snow was 6 feet deep on level ground, 12 feet in drifts. Power lines snapped under the weight. Pipes froze and burst. Roads became impassable, white deserts. The power went out and never came back on. The water stopped flowing. People were trapped in their homes, urban coffins of concrete and steel, starving and freezing in the dark. I had been a freelance graphic designer, a natural shut-in with anxiety issues and a paranoid habit of stockpiling food and supplies. Years of therapy had never quite cured my compulsion to keep emergency supplies that my therapist gently suggested might be excessive. Turned out, paranoia and preparedness look exactly the same. When I saw my neighbors suffering, heard the children crying, watched gaunt faces pressed against frosted windows, my stupid, bleeding heart couldn't stand it. Despite every instinct screaming at me to stay hidden, to stay safe, I opened my door. I opened my door and invited in my own destruction. They stripped my apartment clean with smiles and thank yous. They took my food, my water, my firewood, my blankets. When I had nothing left to give, they looked at me differently. Hungry eyes calculating my weight, my meat. The pervert from across the hall was the first to say it out loud. She's been eating this whole time. Look how healthy she is. Lily, sweet innocent Lily, had tilted her head thoughtfully. I wonder if human meat tastes like pork, is less than #0. 6# is greater than I ran. God, I ran. But there was nowhere to go. The snow was too deep. The cold was too brutal. They caught me on the stairwell, dragged me back, and I pressed my palms against my eyes, forcing the memories back into their cage. It didn't matter. Not anymore. Because I had been given something precious and terrible, a second chance. When I first woke up in my apartment 2 months before the freeze, I'd thought I was having another nightmare. But the calendar was wrong. My phone was wrong. My reflection was wrong, younger, healthier, unmarked by frostbite and desperation. Time had bent backward and given me another roll of the dice. Back then, there had been a full month until the freeze began. Time to prepare, but barely. Time was a luxury I couldn't waste. I'd swallowed my rage and hatred like broken glass, cutting me from the inside. I'd kept my mask perfect around the neighbors. Smiled at the pervert. Laughed at Lily's jokes. Waved at the old bat who stole everything not nailed down. Because I wanted revenge, yes. Oh, how I wanted revenge. But first, I needed to survive. You can't have vengeance if you're dead. And I had a plan. A beautiful, terrible plan. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 8. My grandfather had raised me with rough kindness until he passed 2 years ago, leaving me alone in the world except for a modest inheritance. I'd put every penny into savings and index funds, living on my freelance income, building a small nest egg. Now I withdrew everything. Every last cent. My account balance hit 0, and I felt nothing but grim satisfaction. I found a real estate agent, a perky woman named Diana, who wore too much perfume and called everyone sweetie and told her my requirements large. Top floor. All utilities connected. Completely unfurnished. And because I valued my privacy as an artist, I needed a building with as few residents as possible. Diana's eyes had lit up. Sweetie, I have just the place. The perfect place, as fate would have it, was right across the street from my current building. A newly completed luxury development, one of those soulless glass towers that had sprouted like mushrooms during the building boom. 30 floors of gleaming emptiness. The penthouse on the 30th floor was a 2-story unit with more space than I'd ever need. 4 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, a kitchen, and 2 bathrooms downstairs. 3 bedrooms, another living room, and bathroom upstairs. And crowning it all, a massive 200,300 square foot private rooftop terrace with views of the city that would soon be buried in white. The unit was unfinished, bare concrete floors, unpainted walls, builder-grade everything. The owner had bought it as a pure investment and had no plans to live there. It was perfect. I did a walkthrough that took 5 minutes and paid 2 years' rent up front in cash. Diana had actually gasped at the stack of bills. Sweetie, are you sure? Is less than #0. 6# is greater than that's. That's a lot of money. I'm sure. Because it was unfinished and undesirable, the rent was almost criminally cheap. I was essentially renting a concrete cave in the sky. Contract signed, I immediately contacted contractors. This was the risky part. The modifications I needed would raise questions. But I'd prepared my lies carefully. Step 1. Replace all doors and windows. The terrace entrance and main apartment door were swapped out for reinforced blast-proof steel doors, the kind used in bank vaults and panic rooms. They had rubber seals that would prevent air circulation and maintain temperature. More importantly, they wouldn't warp or crack in extreme cold. And they'd stop anyone trying to break in. Interior doors could be regular ones. Those weren't meant to keep out invaders. All windows were upgraded from standard double-pane to quadruple-paned glass with argon fills and low-E coatings. The kind of windows that could stop a bullet. Then came insulation for every wall, floor, and ceiling. The workers had looked at me with undisguised curiosity. "Ma'am, these modifications are unusual. May I ask what you're planning to do here?" I'd smiled my sweetest smile. "I'm going to be live streaming and recording music. I don't want to disturb any neighbors with noise, and I need climate control for my equipment. Soundproofing and insulation are basically the same materials, right?" The foreman had nodded slowly. "That's actually very considerate of you. Most of these new residents don't give a damn about noise. I believe in being a good neighbor." The irony was delicious. They even complimented me on my thoughtfulness as they packed spray foam into every gap and crack, as they layered rigid foam board over every surface, turning my concrete cave into a fortress. A warm, sealed fortress. I had them install an additional door at the stairway connecting the upper and lower floors. For climate control between zones, I'd explained. Really, it was to reduce air circulation and improve heat retention. The walls got a simple coat of white paint. I didn't care about aesthetics. In my designated bedroom, I had the concrete floor polished to a shine, then installed a dual-purpose fireplace by the window. One of those old-fashioned cast-iron things that could burn wood and cook food simultaneously. The window would vent the smoke. The iron would radiate heat for hours. The kitchen and bathrooms got 3 coats of waterproofing before I installed basic fixtures. I'd need running water until the pipes froze, and bathrooms afterward for other purposes. After all, the modifications came the supply run. This was where things got dangerous, where questions would be asked, where I had to be very, very careful. Firewood was surprisingly easy to buy in bulk. I found a lumber yard that sold split, seasoned hardwood by the cord. But I couldn't just have cords of firewood delivered to a luxury penthouse without raising red flags. So I paid extra, a lot extra, to have workers cut it into specific sizes and pack it in plain cardboard boxes labeled construction materials and crafting supplies. Over the course of 3 weeks, I amassed enough firewood to heat the apartment for 2 solid years. I stacked it in one of the spare bedrooms until the boxes reached the ceiling. Then came everything else. Charcoal briquettes, fire braziers, propane tanks and camp stoves, cans of fuel gel, solar-powered emergency lights, LED lanterns, batteries by the caseload, heavy blackout curtains for every window, bottled water, hundreds of gallons. I bought it from 6 different stores in small quantities so no one would notice. Food. Rice, flour, cooking oil, salt, sugar, spices. Canned goods. Freeze-dried meals. Instant noodles. Protein bars. Nuts. Dried fruits. Honey that would never spoil. Peanut butter. Crackers. Everything with a long shelf life. Everything that didn't require refrigeration. Household goods. Toilet paper. Soap. Toothpaste. Feminine products. First aid supplies. Medication. Vitamins. Clothing. Thermal underwear. Wool socks. Down jackets. Sleeping bags rated for sub-zero temperatures. Emergency blankets. Entertainment. Books. Notebooks. Pens. A guitar. Playing cards. Anything to maintain sanity during the long dark. Furniture. A bed. Table. Chairs. All secondhand, all cheap. I didn't need luxury. The deliveries came in an endless stream. Package after package, box after box, pallet after pallet. The building's loading dock looked like a warehouse. The security guard, a bored, middle-aged man named Frank who spent most shifts watching soccer on his phone, barely glanced at me. "Lot of stuff, miss. I'm renovating. Lots of materials." "Okay." He didn't care. His job was to make sure no one stole from the parking garage, not to monitor what residents brought in. The building manager, a nervous man named Mr. Chen, who wore cheap suits, stopped by my apartment twice. Each time I'd shown him around, let him see that I wasn't altering the structure, wasn't violating any codes. He'd left satisfied. So without much effort, without raising too many alarms, I completely filled both floors of my penthouse fortress. Food, water, fuel, supplies, everything I'd need to survive alone for 2 years. Maybe longer if I was careful. I didn't know exactly how long the freeze would last. In my previous life, I died after 3 months. But the weather hadn't shown any signs of improving. For all I knew, it could be years. So I stockpiled everything I possibly could. Is less than #0. 6# is greater than whatever I didn't use. I could always resell later. If there was a later? After finishing all the preparations, there was still 1 week until the freeze. I spent 2 days moving my most important possessions from my old apartment to the new one. My computer. My hard drives, my grandfather's watch, photographs, things I couldn't replace, things that mattered. Standing in my simply furnished but perfectly stocked bedroom, looking at the fireplace and the boxes of supplies in the reinforced door, I felt something I hadn't felt in either lifetime: complete security. This time, I would definitely survive. This time, I would watch them suffer as I had suffered. This time, Mercy would freeze to death alongside all the fools who expected it. But no matter how I tried to force myself not to think about it, no matter how many times I told myself it was over, it was done, I was safe now, I still had nightmares. The cruelty of my previous life always burst out when I was most vulnerable and caught off guard, erupting through my defenses like a knife through skin. I'd wake drenched in sweat, screaming, my throat raw, my hands clawing at wounds that no longer existed. Last night had been particularly bad. I'd dreamed of Lily's face as she'd helped pin me down. Her sweet, innocent face twisted into something hungry and hollow. "I'm sorry, Mia," she'd whispered as Sophie held the knife. "But we have to survive. You understand, don't you? Is less than #0. 6# is greater than I'd understood. I'd understood that monsters don't always look like monsters. Thinking of those wolf-like vicious good neighbors of mine, I slowly clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. The sharp pain helped ground me, helped push away the memories. Only 5 days left. 5 days until the temperature started dropping, until the snow started falling, until panic set in. My dear good neighbors, your good days are numbered. Treasure them. Don't worry, everything you did to me in that other life, every cruelty, every betrayal, every moment of terror you inflicted, I'll return to you 100-fold. And I'll enjoy every second of it. Daylight came slowly, creeping through my windows like something reluctant. The cold had already begun to set in the first warning sign. Outside, people walked quickly, breath misting in the air. They wore sweaters and light jackets, looking vaguely confused by the sudden temperature drop. Many muttered about climate change, about crazy weather patterns. They talked about it like it was an inconvenience, like it was just another odd news story. They had no idea what was coming. I ordered delivery for breakfast, might as well enjoy modern conveniences while they lasted, then lazily rolled out of bed and shuffled to the bathroom. To facilitate my revenge plan, I was staying in my old apartment for a few more days. Just long enough to plant the seeds that would bloom into their destruction. Soon breakfast arrived, congee and fried dough sticks from my favorite place. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that soon hot food would be a memory. Then, finally steeled with food and purpose, I left my apartment. First, stopped the door across from mine. I stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at the cheap wooden door with its peeling paint and crooked numbers. Behind that door lived Mark and Jennifer Zhang, a married couple who were absolutely disgusting human beings. Jennifer worked some corporate job and was rarely home. I barely saw her, just caught glimpses of a thin woman in business attire rushing in and out at odd hours. Mark, though. Mark, I saw plenty of. Mark was a sleazy deadbeat who'd been unemployed for 3 years. He claimed to be between opportunities, but really, he just played video games all day and stared at women in the hallways. He always looked at me with lecherous eyes that crawled over my body like insects, making my skin prickle with disgust. He'd make comments under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear. Nice ass. Bet you're flexible. What I wouldn't do to you. I'd started rushing past his door, keys already in hand, ready to slam my door and throw the deadbolt. But my fear had only encouraged him, had only made him bolder. One day, he'd actually knocked on my door. When I'd opened it stupidly, always so stupidly trusting, he'd leaned against the doorframe with a grotesque smile and asked, "So, how much do you charge per night?" "I've got cash." I'd been so shocked, so furious, I'd actually screamed at him. Then I'd called the police and reported him. I'd notified building management. I'd told his wife. The police had given him a warning. Management had noted the complaint. And his wife? His wife had showed up at my door to scream at me, to call me a whore and a homewrecker, to accuse me of seducing her husband with my slutty clothes, yoga pants, and a t-shirt. After the police intervention, Mark had pulled back slightly. He stopped the overt harassment, stopped the verbal propositions. But he still loitered by my door, still watched me from his peephole, still made me feel unsafe in my own home. Always staying just this side of legal, just careful enough to avoid another police visit. Until the freeze hit. I remembered it so clearly it made my stomach clench. Third day of the blizzard. My food was already running low because I'd shared so much. People had started getting desperate, had started eyeing each other differently. Mark had been the first one to come at me with a knife. A kitchen knife, actually. An 8-inch chef's knife he'd probably used to cut vegetables for his wife's dinners. He'd held it with confidence, with purpose. "Nothing personal, Mia," he'd said. "But you're soft. Easy meat. And I'm hungry." He'd tried to stab me in the throat. I'd blocked with my forearm, still had the scar in my previous life, a thick white line from wrist to elbow. Then Sophie had kicked my legs out from under me, and Lily had grabbed my hair, and I pressed my palm against the door to steady myself. Breathe. It hadn't happened yet. This time, it wouldn't happen at all. This time, I'd be the one with the knife. I knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps. Footsteps. The door opened. It wasn't Mark. It was an elderly woman, his mother, who'd moved in about a month ago. Mrs. Zhang was a piece of work herself. Late 60s, thin as a rail, with a perpetual scowl and triangular eyes that darted around constantly, always calculating, always looking for advantage. Her favorite hobby was taking advantage of others, squeezing every possible benefit from every interaction. If she didn't grab something free every day, she'd feel like she was losing out, like the universe owed her. She'd stolen my doormat after a week of living there. Just picked it up and carried it into her apartment like it was hers. When I'd asked for it back, she'd claimed she'd bought one just like it. When I'd pointed out my name was written on the bottom in permanent marker, she'd accused me of trying to scam her. I'd let it go. It was just a doormat. In my previous life, she'd been one of the most enthusiastic members of the Let's Raid Mia's apartment party. The old woman squinted at me with those triangular eyes, her mouth pursing into a wrinkled knot. "What do you want?" Her tone was immediately hostile. I hadn't done anything to her, but I was young and she was old, which meant I was automatically suspicious in her worldview. I gave her my sweetest smile, the one I'd practiced in the mirror until it looked genuine. "Good morning, Mrs. Zhang. I hope I'm not disturbing you." She sniffed. "You are. What do you want?" "I just wanted to let you know the supermarket across from our complex is having a huge sale today. Everything 20 off." I was just there and saw signs. That was a lie. I hadn't been there. But I knew the sale was real. "Really?" The old woman perked up immediately, her eyes gleaming with the prospect of savings. Her whole demeanor changed from hostile to interested in a heartbeat. This was her language: discounts, deals, bargains. I nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. They're doing some kind of member appreciation event. But you should hurry." When I left, people were already lining up. The eggs were going really fast. The magic word: eggs. Cheap protein. Something she could hoard. Which supermarket exactly? The big one across the street, next to the pharmacy. You can't miss it, they have signs in the windows. "Oh, but Mrs. Zhang?" I leaned in conspiratorially. "Don't tell anyone else in the building, okay? If too many people go, there won't be enough good stuff left. I'm only telling you because I know you appreciate a good deal." I was appealing to her two greatest loves: getting something for nothing and getting something for nothing that others couldn't have. Her eyes lit up with greedy joy. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. This is between us neighbors." Exactly. Neighbors looking out for each other. In my previous life, that supermarket had held an unannounced member appreciation sale. Very few people in the complex had known about it because the store hadn't advertised much, just window signs and an email to members. I'd only caught it because I'd been walking past and had bought a lot of supplies at discount prices. I knew Mrs. Zhang would definitely go. She couldn't help herself. The compulsion to get a deal was stronger than anything else in her life. Sure enough, not 15 minutes later, I saw her scuttling out the building's front entrance, pushing her ratty old shopping cart with determination. She'd put on her going-out jacket, a puffy thing from the 1980 seconds, and had her purse clutched under one arm. Go ahead, I thought, watching from my window. Go ahead and buy plenty. Buy everything you can fit in that cart. Load up on rice and canned goods, and oil and anything else on sale. Because in 3 days, when the snow starts falling and doesn't stop, when people start panicking and hoarding, when your deadbeat son suggests raiding neighbors' apartments, you're going to be the first target. You're going to have so much food, Mrs. Zhang. Everyone in the building is going to know about it. And they're going to be very, very interested in sharing. After misleading her, I went downstairs to visit 2 young women who lived on the 4th floor. Thanks to them, I'd finally learned what fake friends really were. What people who smiled to your face and stabbed you in the back looked like. Lily Chen and Sophie Walsh. Both 26, like me. Both working low-level corporate jobs. Both pretty in that generic, interchangeable way. We'd been friendly before the freeze because we were similar in age and had similar schedules. I'd thought we were friends. Real friends. I'd been catastrophically wrong. In my previous life, these 2 had invited me to go to the supermarket with them on the day of the member appreciation sale. Come on, Mia. It'll be fun. We can get lunch after. Because the supermarket was having a sale and because I had my stockpiling habit, I'd bought a lot that day. Probably too much, in hindsight. My cart had been overflowing rice, canned goods, instant noodles, bottles of water, cooking oil, flour. Sophie had laughed and called me a doomsday prepper. Lily had asked if I was expecting World War III. I'd laughed it off. I just like being prepared. You never know what might happen. 1 week after the blizzard started, when the snow was still falling and the power was gone and people were running out of food, these two had posted in the building's group chat. The message was perfectly calculated, perfectly innocent sounding, "Hey everyone. Hope you're all staying warm and safe. Just wanted to check in. Mia on floor 6 mentioned a while back that she keeps a lot of extra supplies. Mia, do you still have extra? Would you be willing to share with neighbors in need? There are families with small children who are running low." The emoji. That fucking emoji. Like they cared. Like they gave a damn about anyone but themselves. Back then, I'd been a complete idiot. I hadn't realized they were morally blackmailing me, backing me into a corner where refusing would make me look like a monster. I hadn't understood how important supplies were in that extreme weather, how desperately people would fight for food. I'd seen that message and felt guilty. Guilty for having food when others didn't. Guilty for being prepared when they weren't. So I'd responded, "Of course. I'd be happy to share. Come by anytime." I'd opened my door and invited in my own destruction. They'd swarmed my apartment like locusts, stripped it bare, taken everything. And when it was all gone, when my cupboards were empty and my stockpile depleted, it was Lily who'd said, with wide, innocent eyes, "Mia, you must have more somewhere. You bought so much that day. Where are you hiding the rest?" And Sophie, nodding thoughtfully, "Yeah, you wouldn't have given away everything, right? You must have kept some for yourself. That's only smart." They'd turned the entire building against me with those simple questions. Suddenly, everyone was convinced I had a secret stash, that I was hoarding while they starved. They'd torn through my apartment, ripping up floorboards, emptying drawers, searching for supplies that didn't exist. And even when they found nothing, they still looked at me with hungry eyes. It was Lily Sweet, innocent Lily with her round face and gentle voice who'd first suggested it. She'd been talking to Sophie in the hallway, probably not realizing I could hear through my door. "She's been eating well this whole time," Lily had said thoughtfully. "Look how healthy she looks compared to everyone else. Doesn't that seem unfair?" "Very unfair," Sophie had agreed. "I read once that people taste like pork. Isn't that interesting?" I'd locked myself in my apartment after that, barricading the door. But they'd gotten in eventually. They always got in. So this time, I wouldn't let them off. This time, they'd learn what real hunger felt like. "Mia." The door opened to reveal Lily Chen, her round face breaking into a delighted smile. "Oh my God, it's you! We haven't seen you in forever." She looked exactly as I remembered, shoulder-length black hair, bangs, big eyes behind trendy glasses, wearing cute casual clothes from fast fashion brands. She looked harmless. Friendly. Like someone you'd trust with your secrets. "Mia, what have you been up to?" Sophie Walsh appeared behind her, pouting dramatically. She was taller than Lily, with dyed brown hair and a perpetually theatrical expression. "You totally ghosted us. Is less than #0. 6 is greater than you promised we'd go get hot pot this month." It was Sunday, so they were both home, probably planning a lazy day of online shopping and Netflix. Behind my back, hidden from their view, my hand dug fingernails into my arm hard enough to draw blood. The sharp pain was the only thing keeping me from lunging forward and wrapping my hands around their throats. I could see it so clearly. Lily's shocked expression as I squeezed. Sophie's screams. Their faces turning purple as they clawed at my hands, as they realized too late what I really was. But no. Not yet. Control. I needed control. Forcing down my disgust, swallowing my rage like poison, I squeezed out a smile. "I'm so sorry." I've been super busy with a project. You know how freelance work goes. Feast or famine, right? We were worried about you, Lily said, pulling me into a hug. I forced myself not to flinch, not to shove her away. Her perfume, something sweet and cloying, filled my nose. In my previous life, that same perfume had been in my apartment when they'd ransacked it. That's so sweet of you, I managed. So no hot pot? Sophie was still pouting. Sorry, no hot pot for now. I'm broke, actually. But I'm working on a project this week that should pay out next week. Once I get paid, I'll treat you both to an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. The really nice place downtown. How does that sound? Their eyes lit up. Of course they did. Free food was their favorite kind of food. Really? Lily clasped her hands together. You don't have to do that. I want to. To make up for being such a terrible friend lately. You're not terrible. Sophie grabbed my hand. You're the best. The best. Sure. The best victim, they meant. The best mark. The easiest person to manipulate with guilt and social pressure. Actually, I said, as if the thought had just occurred to me, I wanted to ask you guys something. About that supermarket sale across the street, are you going? They exchanged glances. What sale? Lily asked. Oh, the member appreciation thing today. Everything's 20 off. I thought everyone knew about it. Sophie shook her head. I didn't get any email or anything. Weird. Maybe it's just for certain members? Anyway, I'm going to stop by later to grab some stuff. With the weather getting cold, I figured it's a good time to stock up on basics, you know? Get ahead of any price increases. I planted the seed carefully. I needed them to go to that sale. I needed them to buy supplies. Visible supplies. Supplies that everyone in the building would know about. That's actually really smart, Lily said thoughtfully. We should go, Soph. Yeah, let's check it out. Thanks for the tip, Mia. Of course, is less than #0. 6# is greater than. That's what friends are for, right? Looking out for each other. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I chatted with them for a few more minutes, playing the role of the friendly neighbor, the sweet, naive girl who trusted too easily. Then I made my excuses and left. As I walked back up to my floor, I allowed myself a small, dark smile. The trap was set. Now I just needed to wait. Over the next 3 days, I visited more neighbors, each time with a friendly smile and a helpful tip about the amazing sale at the supermarket. I told Mrs. Wong on the 8th floor, who had 3 young children and was always stressed about money. Get there early, the baby formula is going fast. I mentioned it to Mr. Peterson, the elderly veteran on the 7th floor who lived on a fixed income. They have canned goods for practically nothing. I casually brought it up to the Johnson family on the 5th floor while passing them in the hallway. Oh, you're going out? Don't forget to check out the supermarket sale. Everything's discounted. Each person I told made sure to visit the sale. Human nature is predictable, like that no one can resist a good deal, especially when money is tight and winter is coming. And because I'd specifically told each person not to spread the word so there would be enough for everyone, they of course told everyone they knew. Secrets are only fun if you can share them. Within 2 days, half the building had hit that sale. People came back with overflowing shopping carts, with proud stories of how much money they'd saved, with visible stockpiles they couldn't resist bragging about. Mrs. Zhang bought so much her son had to make 3 trips to carry it all upstairs. Lily and Sophie posted Instagram stories of their haul with captions about being responsible adults who meal prep. The Johnsons' kids were literally carrying bags through the lobby. Everyone could see who had supplies. Everyone knew who had food. And when the freeze came, when panic set in, When people got desperate, they'd know exactly where to look. I, meanwhile, had already moved most of my belongings to the penthouse across the street. I kept just enough in my old apartment to maintain the illusion that I still lived there full-time. A few changes of clothes, some toiletries, my laptop and work files. But my real home, my fortress, was ready and waiting. September 30th, I woke up to the sound of sleet hitting my window. The temperature had dropped below freezing overnight. The forecast showed more cold weather incoming, but meteorologists were still calling it a cold snap and unseasonable weather. They thought it would pass in a week or two. They had no idea. I spent the day moving the last of my things to the penthouse, making trip after trip across the street with bags and boxes. No one paid attention. People were too focused on the weird weather. October 1st, the first snow began to fall. Just light flurries at first, delicate flakes that melted on contact with the ground. People took pictures, made snow-related jokes on social media, complained about the cold. Children played outside, trying to catch snowflakes on their tongues. No one was concerned. It was just snow. It would melt. October 2nd, the snow got heavier. October 3rd, it didn't stop. The flurries became a steady snowfall. Then a heavy snowfall. Then a blizzard that made it impossible to see 10 feet in front of your face. The city scrambled to deploy snowplows, but they couldn't keep up. The snow fell faster than they could clear it. 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet. The power went out on October 4th. I was in my penthouse when it happened, sitting in my bedroom with the fireplace already lit. I'd lit it that morning, more for practice than necessity. The room was warm, almost cozy. I was eating instant noodles and reading a book by firelight when suddenly the ambient sound of the building died. The hum of HVAC systems. The buzz of lights in the hallway. The distant sound of televisions and appliances. All gone in an instant. Silence. Complete silence except for the howling wind and the crackle of my fire. I walked to the window and looked out. The city was dark. Not just my building, everything. As far as I could see in the swirling snow, there were no lights. The power grid had failed. I thought about my neighbors in the building across the street, sitting in their apartments in the sudden dark. Confused. Starting to worry. In a few hours, they'd be cold. In a day, they'd be desperate. I returned to my fireplace and added another log. The flames leaped higher, painting dancing shadows on the walls. Let them freeze, I thought. Let them feel what I felt. October 5th, 7th. The first wave of panic. From my penthouse windows, I watched my old building descend into chaos. With the power out and the snow still falling, people quickly realized this wasn't a normal cold snap. This was something else. Something worse. I could see flashlights and phone lights moving behind windows. Could hear distant shouts and arguments even through the storm. On social media before the cell towers went down, people posted panicked questions. When is power coming back? Should we evacuate? Anyone know what's happening? The answer to all those questions was the same. No one knew. No one was coming. No one could help. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Roads were impassable. Communication systems were failing. The government issued a shelter-in-place order that was both useless and redundant. No one could leave even if they wanted to. People were trapped in their apartments with whatever supplies they'd happen to have on hand. By October 7th, the first fights broke out. I watched from my window as someone I couldn't tell who was forcibly removed from an apartment on the 4th floor of my old building. Multiple people were involved, dragging someone through the hallway and throwing them into the stairwell. I couldn't hear what was said, but I could see the violence. It had begun. The strong would prey on the weak. The prepared would be targeted by the unprepared. and anyone with visible supplies would become a target. Like I'd planned. My old neighbors, the ones who'd bought so much at that supermarket sale, were about to learn a hard lesson about keeping a low profile. I spent those first days settling into my routine. Wake up. Add logs to the fireplace. Eat a simple breakfast. Exercise to stay warm and maintain strength. Read. Practice guitar. Manage my supplies. The hardest part was the isolation. The silence. The knowledge that outside my reinforced door, people were suffering. But I forced myself to remember what they'd done to me. How they'd taken everything. How they'd looked at me with hungry eyes. I couldn't afford compassion. Compassion was what had killed me the first time. Still, sometimes late at night, I'd hear sounds. Screams. Breaking glass. Arguments that turned violent. I'd lie in my warm bed, under my warm blankets, listening to the sounds of society breaking down, and feel nothing. No. That's a lie. I felt satisfaction. Dark, cold satisfaction. This is what you deserve, I'd think. All of you. October 8th. The building group chat exploded with messages before the cell towers finally died. I'd kept my phone charged using solar panels on the rooftop, so I could watch the descent into madness in real time. Mrs. Zhang, anyone have extra food? We're running low. Mark Zhang, Mom, don't beg these people. Sophie Walsh, we're getting low too. This is so scary. Lily Chen, has anyone heard from Mia? She was always prepared for stuff like this. Maybe she has extras? There it was. Right on schedule. Lily, poisonous as always, trying to put a target on my back. But I wasn't living in that apartment anymore. I'd made sure to stop by a few times, to make noise, to maintain the illusion. But I'd already moved everything valuable. Mr. Peterson, I saw her going in and out with lots of bags before the storm. Moving somewhere? Jennifer Zhang, she definitely had a lot of supplies. She was at that sale buying tons of stuff. Lily Chen, should we check on her? Make sure she's okay? She might need help. The concern trolling was Oscar-worthy. Lily should have been an actress. Sophie Walsh, yeah. Let's go check on her. Safety in numbers, right? They weren't checking on me. They were coming to rob me. I watched the messages pile up, watched them coordinate, and smiled. Let them come. October 8th, late afternoon. I'd prepared for this moment. I'd stayed in my old apartment specifically for this moment. I'd brought a few days' worth of supplies back to the old place, enough to make it look like I was rationing, like I was struggling but had a bit saved. Some canned goods. A few bottles of water. 1 bag of rice. When the knock came, I was ready. Mia? Are you in there? It's Lily and Sophie! I opened the door slowly, making sure to look haggard. I deliberately mussed my hair, hadn't bothered with makeup. I wore layers of clothing like I was cold. Oh, thank God you're okay. Lily immediately pushed past me into the apartment. Sophie followed, both of them scanning my space with predatory eyes. We were so worried, Sophie said. You haven't been responding in the group chat. My phone died, I lied. The power's out, so I can't charge it. Right. Lily was already moving toward my kitchen. Hey, we were talking with the neighbors and everyone's running low on supplies. We remembered you bought a lot at that sale. Would you be willing to share? There are families with kids who need help. There it was. The moral blackmail. The trap they thought was so clever. I let my face fall, let my shoulders slump. Played the guilty Good Samaritan perfectly. I only bought a little bit. Just enough for myself. I didn't know it would get this bad. Come on, Mia. Sophie's voice took on an edge. We saw you. You had a full cart. I ate most of it already. I gestured to my sparse kitchen. See? This is all I have left. They looked at my pathetic stockpile, intentionally pathetic, with barely concealed disappointment. That's it? Lily's sweet voice had a sharp undertone now. That's it. I'm sorry. I wish I had more to share. They exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication. Well, Sophie said slowly, maybe you could share what you have? For the kids? The kids. Always the kids. The perfect emotional weapon. I pretended to hesitate, to struggle with the decision. Okay? Let me pack some things. I gave them half of what I'd brought. 2 cans of soup. A few bottles of water. A pound of rice. They took it with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Thanks, Mia. You're a real friend. Of course. We have to help each other. After they left, I immediately packed up the rest of my fake supplies and carried them to my penthouse. I wouldn't be returning to the old apartment. From now on, I'd watch from across the street. Watch them turn on each other. Watch them tear themselves apart. October 9th, 12th. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Through my window, using binoculars, I could see into the apartments across the street. Could see the desperation growing. Mrs. Zhang's apartment was broken into on October 10th. I watched as multiple people forced their way in, overwhelming Mark, who tried to defend their supplies. They stripped the place clean in less than an hour. Mrs. Zhang stood in her hallway afterward, crying. Mark screamed at the retreating looters. No one cared. Lily and Sophie's apartment was hit next. They'd made the mistake of posting about the supplies they'd received from Mia in the group chat, trying to look charitable. Big mistake. That night, someone broke down their door. I couldn't see who, it was dark, and they moved fast, but I heard the screams even from across the street. The building was eating itself alive. By October 12th, most of the easy targets had been hit. People were getting creative in their desperation. Some tried to melt snow for water. It took so much fuel to melt enough to drink. Some burned furniture for heat. It wouldn't last long. Some stopped caring about consequences. I watched a man on the 7th floor throw another man through a window over a can of beans. The body fell 7 stories and disappeared into the snow. No one came to investigate. There was no law anymore. In my warm apartment, I ate hot soup and felt nothing. October 13th. The day they came for me. I was in my penthouse, comfortable and warm, when I heard pounding on my old apartment door across the street. Through my binoculars, I could see Mark Zhang, Lily, Sophie, and 3 other men I recognized from the building. They were armed with kitchen knives and metal pipes. Mia, open up! Mark's voice carried even through the storm. They pounded and pounded. When no one answered, they broke down the door. I watched them tear through my old apartment, searching for supplies that weren't there. Watched them rip up floorboards and tear apart furniture. Watched them find nothing. Watched them grow more desperate and angry. Where the fuck is she? Mark threw a chair across the room. She must have another place, Lily said, her sweet voice venomous now. She was moving things before the storm started. Remember? Peterson said he saw her with bags. So find her, one of the other men growled. They tried. Over the next few days, they searched the building top to bottom. Knocked on every door, interrogated every resident. But no one had seen me. Because I was never there. I was across the street, in a building they didn't even know existed, watching them destroy themselves. October 14th, 20th. The dark week. This was when things got truly horrific. With most easy supplies exhausted, People's desperation reached new heights. The veneer of civilization hadn't just cracked, it had shattered completely. I watched things I'll never forget. Saw a woman offer herself sexually for a bottle of water. Saw men fight with knives over a dead rat. Saw someone on the 5th floor dragging what might have been a body wrapped in sheets into their apartment. I didn't want to think about what that meant. But I knew. I remembered. When there's no food left, when hunger becomes agony, when death seems certain anyway, people stop being people. They become animals. Worse than animals. The pervert, Mark, proved to be as disgusting as I remembered. Through my binoculars, I watched him corner a younger woman in the stairwell, watched the exchange I couldn't hear but could clearly understand. Her terror. His power. I could have done something. Could have? What? Gone over there? Intervened somehow? But I didn't. Because that was the woman who'd held me down while they decided whether to kill me quickly or slowly. She'd advocated for, slowly, said I, deserved to suffer for hoarding. So I watched. And I felt nothing. By October 20th, most of the building had gone silent. People were either dead, too weak to make noise, or had learned that making noise attracted attention, and attention was dangerous. The snow still fell. The temperature still dropped. And I sat in my warm apartment, eating hot meals, reading books, surviving. October 21st, 31st. The turning point. On October 21st, something changed. The snow stopped falling. For the first time in 3 weeks, the sky cleared. Weak sunlight filtered through the clouds. The temperature, still well below freezing, felt almost warm by comparison. People emerged from their apartments, blinking in the light like vampires. Emergency services finally managed to get through on some of the main roads. I heard sirens in the distance, the first organized rescue attempts. Police, firefighters, National Guard. They started evacuating people to emergency shelters, places with heat and food and medical care. From my window, I watched the evacuation of my old building. Survivors were helped into military trucks. Medics treated cases of frostbite and malnutrition. Bodies were tagged and loaded separately. I saw Mrs. Zhang being carried out on a stretcher, her son Mark walking beside her with his head down. Both had survived, unfortunately. I saw Lily and Sophie stumbling out together, supporting each other. They looked gaunt, haunted. Their Instagram-perfect faces were hollow now. Mr. Peterson came out under his own power, stubborn old bastard. The Johnsons came out with only 2 of their 3 children. The youngest hadn't made it. I watched them go, one by one. Watched my old neighbors, the ones who'd killed me in another life, be carried off to safety. And I felt relief, and disappointment, and confusion. I'd wanted them to suffer, and they had suffered. I'd wanted revenge, and I'd gotten it. But seeing them broken like this, seeing the death toll, seeing the mother of the child who didn't make it, screaming as they loaded the small body bag, it didn't feel as good as I'd thought it would. The man I'd become, could I even call myself human anymore? Felt satisfied. But somewhere deep inside, the person I used to be was crying. November 1st. I had a visitor. I'd thought I was completely alone in my building. The few other residents had either evacuated early or weren't living here full-time. So when there was a knock on my reinforced door, I nearly jumped out of my skin. I grabbed a knife before answering. Looked through the peephole. A man stood outside. Late 30s, tall, wearing a police uniform under a heavy coat. He looked exhausted but alert. Hello? I called through the door. Who are you? My name is Officer Mitchell Hayes. I'm doing wellness checks on remaining residents in this area. Are you all right in there? A cop. Shit. Had someone reported me? Had my neighbors figured out where I was? I'm fine, I said. I have supplies. I don't need evacuation. That's good to hear. But I need to verify that you're safe and of sound mind. Can you open the door, please? Just for a moment. I hesitated. Could I refuse? Did I have legal grounds to refuse? But he was a cop. If I refused, he might get suspicious. Might think I was in trouble. Might call for backup. And I didn't want attention. Slowly, I unlocked the door and opened it a crack. Kept my body blocking the entrance so he couldn't see inside. Officer Hayes looked at me with surprise. You look healthy. I've been managing okay. May I come in? Just for a moment. I need to complete the wellness check formally. I really didn't want to let him in, but refusing would be more suspicious. Fine. But just for a minute. I opened the door fully and stepped back. He entered and I watched his eyes widen as he took in my apartment. The warm air from the fireplace. The organized supplies. The fact that I clearly wasn't suffering at all. How long have you been here? He asked slowly. Since before the freeze. And you have heat. Food. Water. Yes. He turned to me with an expression I couldn't read. You knew this was coming. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. I'm not here to cause trouble for you, he said gently. I'm just trying to help people. But I have to ask, how did you know to prepare like this? I could have lied. Should have lied. But something about him made me want to tell the truth. Maybe it was the exhaustion in his eyes. Maybe it was the kindness there despite everything he must have seen. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying the secret alone. I didn't know, I said. I just had a feeling. Call it intuition. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Well, your intuition saved your life. Is less than #0. 6 hashes greater than, and it's kept you comfortable while others. He trailed off. While others suffered, I finished. Yes, I'm not responsible for them. No, you're not. He said it simply, without judgment. You're responsible for yourself. And you did what you needed to survive. I felt unexpected tears building. Then why do I feel so guilty? Because you're human. And humans feel guilty when others suffer, even when it's not their fault. He walked to my window and looked out at the snow-covered city. Can I ask you something? Okay. Did you try to warn anyone? I told some people about a sale at a supermarket. Encouraged them to stock up. Did they listen? Some of them did. They bought supplies. Then other people targeted them for those supplies. He nodded slowly. So you learned that helping can hurt. Yes. That's a hard lesson. We stood in silence for a moment. Officer Hayes, Mitchell. Call me Mitchell. Mitchell. What happens now? Now? The worst is over. The temperature is rising slowly. Emergency services are operational again. We're evacuating survivors to shelters and medical facilities. The cleanup will take months, maybe years. But we'll recover. And me? You stay here if you want. You're clearly capable of taking care of yourself. I'll note in my report that you're healthy and have adequate supplies. No one will bother you. I felt relief wash over me. Thank you. But Mia, can I call you Mia? I nodded. Don't isolate yourself forever. What happened out there was horrible. But we're still human. We still need each other. I'll think about it. He smiled, a real smile, despite his exhaustion. That's all I ask. He moved toward the door, then paused. Actually, would you mind if I came back sometime? Not for official business. Just to check in. Make sure you're okay. I should have said no. Should have maintained my isolation, my safety. But looking at him at this man who was exhausted and probably traumatized but still trying to help people, I found myself saying, yes. You can come back. His smile widened. I'd like that. After he left, I sat by my fireplace and cried for the first time since my rebirth. Cried for the people who died. Cried for the person I used to be. Cried for the innocence I'd lost twice now. But maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. November 2nd, 15th. The slow recovery. Mitchell came back 3 days later. He knocked on my door around dinner time, looking even more exhausted than before. Sorry to bother you, he said. I was in the area and thought I'd check in. Make sure you're still okay. I'm fine. Do you want to come in? Only if it's not an imposition. It's not. He entered gratefully, immediately gravitating toward the warmth of the fireplace. God, that feels good. Most of the shelters are overcrowded and the heat is spotty. Have you been working nonstop? Pretty much. The situation is bad. Worse than you can imagine. The death toll is in the thousands just in our city. Nationwide, they're estimating tens of thousands. I felt my stomach clench. I'm sorry. Not your fault. He rubbed his face tiredly. I've just seen so much these past few weeks. Things I'll never forget. Do you want to talk about it? Can't. Would violate confidentiality. And honestly, I don't think I'm ready to process it yet. Then just sit. Rest for a while. He did. We sat in comfortable silence for almost an hour, just existing together. I made tea. I had a small propane camping stove for such purposes, and we drank it slowly. This is nice, he said finally. Just being somewhere warm and quiet. Somewhere normal. You're welcome here anytime. Thank you. That means more than you know. Before he left, I made him take some supplies. Food, batteries, a warm blanket. I can't accept this, he protested. You're out there helping people. You need to take care of yourself too. He looked at me with something like wonder. You're very kind. Kind. The word hit me like a slap. I'd spent weeks planning revenge, watching people suffer, feeling satisfaction at their pain. Kind was the last thing I was. I'm not kind, I said quietly. I'm a survivor. Those aren't mutually exclusive. After he left, I thought about that a lot. November 16th, 30th. The questioning. Mitchell visited 4 more times in those 2 weeks. Never announced, always around dinner time, always exhausted. We developed a routine. He'd arrive. I'd make him hot food. I'd learn to ration my ingredients to make surprisingly decent meals. We'd eat together and talk. He told me about the rescue efforts. About the survivors suffering from PTSD, malnutrition, frostbite. About the difficult work of identifying bodies. About the criminal investigations into the violence that had occurred. I told him about my life before, about being a freelance designer, about my anxiety issues, about losing my parents and grandfather. I didn't tell him about dying and being reborn. That secret stayed locked inside. But one evening, while we were eating soup I'd made from canned vegetables and rice, he asked the question I'd been dreading. Mia, can I ask you something personal? Okay. How did you really know to prepare for this? I set down my spoon carefully. I told you. Intuition. Intuition doesn't explain this level of preparation. The modifications to your apartment. The stockpile of supplies. The strategic choices you made. You knew exactly what was coming. I was just paranoid. No. You were informed. He leaned forward. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. But I need to understand. Did someone warn you? Did you have access to classified information? A government report, maybe? I laughed bitterly. No. Nothing like that. Then how? I looked at him, at this kind, exhausted man who'd been nothing but decent to me, and made a decision. What I'm about to tell you will sound insane. Try me. I've seen insane. So I told him. Everything. I told him about my previous life. About dying at my neighbor's hands. About waking up 2 months in the past. About using my knowledge to prepare. About plotting revenge. I told him about watching my neighbors suffer, about feeling satisfaction, about the guilt that was slowly eating me alive. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, silence stretched between us. Say something, I whispered. I believe you. What? I believe you. Or at least, I believe that you believe it. Whether it was a prophetic dream, a mental break, or actual time travel doesn't matter. You knew what was coming, and you prepared. That's smart, not wrong. But I watched people suffer. People I could have saved. Could you have? Is less than #0. 6# is greater than. Really? His voice was gentle but firm. If you'd warned everyone, would they have believed you? If you'd shared your supplies, would they have lasted? Or would they have just taken everything and then turned on you anyway? I don't know. I've seen what desperation does to people, Mia. I've seen good people do terrible things when they're starving. You're not responsible for their choices. But I enjoyed their suffering. I wanted them to hurt. After what they did to you, or will do, or whatever timeline we're talking about, that's normal. Human. It doesn't feel human. It feels monstrous. He reached across and took my hand. You're not a monster. You're hurt. And scared. And trying to survive. That's okay. I started crying then. Really crying, sobbing like I hadn't since I'd woken up in this second chance. He didn't try to fix it or make it better. He just held my hand and let me cry. December 1st, 15th. The thaw. The temperature continued to rise, degree by degree. The snow began to melt, slowly revealing the world beneath. It was ugly. Damaged buildings. Abandoned cars. And bodies. So many bodies that had been hidden beneath the snow. The cleanup crews worked around the clock. The morgues were overwhelmed. Mass graves were dug on the outskirts of the city. Mitchell visited almost every evening now. Is less than #0. 6# is greater than R. Conversations grew deeper, more personal. He told me about his family parents in another state who he hadn't been able to contact for weeks, a sister who was safe but traumatized. About joining the police because he wanted to help people, to make a difference. I told him about my loneliness, about feeling like I didn't fit in the world. About my creative work, my anxiety, my struggles. And slowly, carefully, we became something more than friends. It wasn't dramatic. No big confession or romantic moment. Just a gradual growing closer, a trust building, a realization that we understood each other. On December 15th, after dinner, he stayed later than usual. We were sitting by the fireplace, shoulders touching, when he turned to me. Mia, I need to tell you something. Okay. I think I'm falling for you. My heart stopped. Mitchell, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. You're the only good thing I've found in this disaster. The only person who makes me feel human again. I should have pulled away. Should have protected myself. Should have remembered that caring about people led to pain. But I didn't want to be cold anymore. Didn't want to be alone. I'm falling for you too, I whispered. He kissed me then. Soft and tentative and perfect. When we broke apart, we were both smiling. So what happens now? I asked. Now? We take it slow. We figure this out together. No pressure, no expectations. Just us. I'd like that. December 16, 31st. The complications. Of course, nothing is ever simple. On December 20th, while Mitchell was visiting, there was a pounding on my door. We both froze. No one knew I was here except Mitchell. Who would be knocking? He stood, hand automatically going to where his gun would be if he was on duty. Stay back. He looked through the peephole. Then his expression darkened. It's 3 men. They look aggressive. Do you know them? I looked. My blood ran cold. Mark Zhang. And 2 other men from my old building. The ones who'd broken into my old apartment looking for supplies. They're from my old building, I whispered. They must have found out I'm here. Mia. Mark's voice came through the door. We know you're in there. We just want to talk. We're not letting them in, Mitchell said firmly. Mia. Come on, don't be like this. We just want to see how you're doing. Go away, I shouted. Leave me alone. After you let us all starve? While you were hiding over here eating like a queen? Mark's voice turned ugly. You owe us, bitch. Mitchell pulled out his phone and called for backup. This is Officer Hayes. I need units at. He gave the address. 3 aggressive males attempting to harass a resident. Possible breaking and entering attempt. The pounding continued, getting more violent. We know you have supplies in there. Just share some. That's all we want. That's not all they want, I said quietly. They want to hurt me. They'll have to go through me first. The pounding stopped suddenly. I heard voices arguing outside, then footsteps retreating. They're leaving, Mitchell said, still tense. They'll come back. Not if I can help it. Police arrived 10 minutes later. Mitchell went outside to brief them, then returned. They're going to patrol the building and keep an eye out. I've also documented this as harassment and a potential threat. If they come back, they'll be arrested. Thank you. Mia, I think you should consider evacuating. Going to a shelter, at least temporarily. No. This is my home. I'm not letting them drive me out. They know where you are now. That makes you vulnerable. I have a reinforced door and supplies for months. I'll be fine. He looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. Okay. But I'm going to check on you twice a day from now on. And you call me if anything happens. Anything. I will. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The confrontation had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. They'd found me. After everything, they'd found me. And the look in Mark's eyes, that hungry, angry look, reminded me too much of my previous life. January 1st, 15th, 2023. The new year. New fears. The harassment didn't stop. Mark and his friends came back 3 more times. Each time, they pounded on the door and made threats. Each time, Mitchell or other officers chased them away. But they were getting bolder. More desperate. On January 10th, they tried to break in while I was asleep. I woke to the sound of something hitting my door, a crowbar or pipe, trying to force it open. The reinforced door held, but the sound was terrifying. I called Mitchell immediately. He arrived with backup within minutes, but the men were gone by then. This is escalating, he said grimly. They're going to seriously hurt you if they get in. They won't get in. The door is rated for forced entry attempts. Physical security is one thing. But what about when you need to leave? What about supplies? You can't stay locked in here forever. Watch me. But he was right. My supplies wouldn't last forever. And I couldn't live in fear, looking over my shoulder every time I left the apartment. There has to be a solution, I said. There is. Press charges. Get restraining orders. Let the law handle this. The law couldn't handle it last time, I said without thinking. He gave me a sharp look. Last time? You mean in your previous life? Shit. I'd revealed too much. Yes, I admitted, is less than #0. 6# is greater than they killed me. The law couldn't stop them then. But they can now. The situation is different. We have functioning emergency services, working courts, proper resources. Let me help you. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that this time would be different. Okay, I finally said. What do I need to do? Over the next few days, Mitchell helped me file police reports, get restraining orders, and document every harassment incident. Mark and his friends were arrested, charged with harassment and attempted breaking and entering. They were released on bail, but warned that any further contact with me would result in serious jail time. For a while, the harassment stopped. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. January 16th, 31st. The revelation. Things were quiet for 2 weeks. No harassment. No threats. Just normal life slowly returning to the city. Emergency services were fully operational again. Utilities were being restored block by block. Businesses were reopening. The economy was struggling but recovering. Life was going back to normal. Except I couldn't feel normal. The trauma of both lives weighed on me. The memories. The guilt. The fear. Mitchell noticed, of course. He always noticed. You're not sleeping, he said one evening. I can see the circles under your eyes. Nightmares. About them is less than #0. 6# is greater than about what happened. About what happened. About what could happen. About what I've become. He pulled me close. You're still you. Still good. Am I, though? I watched people suffer and felt nothing. I planned their destruction. I enjoyed their pain. You were hurt and scared. That doesn't excuse it. No. But it explains it. And you can choose to be different now. You can choose kindness now. Can I? After everything? Yes. Because you're talking to me about this. Because you feel guilt. Because you're questioning yourself. Monsters don't do that. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. Mitchell, what if I'm broken? What if I can't be fixed? Then we'll work on it together. You don't have to be fixed to be loved. The word loved hung in the air between us. You love me? I whispered. Yes. I love you. Even knowing about your revenge plot, your anger, your dark thoughts. I love you because you're honest about them. Because you're trying to be better. I started crying. I don't deserve you. That's not your call to make. I get to decide who I love. He kissed me then, and it felt like absolution. Like maybe, just maybe, I could be redeemed. February 1st, 28th. The peace. The city continued to heal. So did I. Mitchell moved most of his things into my penthouse. We fell into a domestic routine that felt surprisingly normal. He'd work his shifts. I'd take on freelance design projects. The internet was back, thank God. We'd cook dinner together, talk about our days, fall asleep tangled together. It was quiet. Simple. Good. I even started to tentatively reconnect with people. A young couple with a baby, Sarah and Jack, lived on the floor below me. They'd evacuated early and survived relatively unscathed. We became friendly, trading supplies and conversation. "You were smart to prepare," Sarah said one day. We barely made it out. If it wasn't for someone calling in a wellness check, we might not have. "Someone called for you?" "Yeah." Some anonymous tip to the police that there was a couple with a baby on the 29th floor who needed help. They sent Mitchell, actually. He got us out just in time. She didn't know it was me who'd called. I'd used Mitchell's name to make an anonymous report about them, ensuring they'd be prioritized for evacuation. Maybe I wasn't completely monstrous after all. March 1st, 15th. The confrontation. I ran into Sophie at a grocery store on March 8th. We both froze when we saw each other. She looked terrible gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes and a haunted expression. "Mia," she said quietly. "Sophie." I wanted to say "I'm sorry" is less than #0. 6# is greater than for everything. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. Imagine telling her exactly what she'd done to me, how much she'd hurt me. Imagined making her feel even a fraction of the pain I'd felt. But looking at her now, broken, traumatized, barely surviving, I found I didn't have the energy for hate anymore. "I forgive you," I said. She looked shocked. "What?" "I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because I'm tired of carrying anger. I don't understand. After everything, you were desperate. Scared. You made terrible choices. But so did everyone. Including me. You never did anything wrong. I watched people suffer when I could have helped. I'm not innocent either." We stood there in the grocery aisle, two survivors of the same nightmare, both carrying our own guilt. "Thank you," she finally said. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but thank you. We all deserve a chance to be better than our worst moments." After she left, I felt lighter. Like I'd put down a weight I'd been carrying for 2 lifetimes. Maybe Mitchell was right. Maybe I could choose to be kind now. Maybe redemption was possible. Epilogue 2 years later, March 15th, 2025. Mitchell and I stood on our rooftop terrace, the same terrace where I'd once hung laundry to freeze-dry meat, where I'd stored supplies, where I'd watched the world end and begin again. The city had largely recovered. New buildings replaced those too damaged to repair. The economy was stable. Life had returned to something resembling normal, though everyone who'd lived through the freeze carried scars. "Are you sure about this?" Mitchell asked, smiling. I looked down at the positive pregnancy test in my hand, feeling a complex mix of terror and joy. "I'm terrified," I admitted. Bringing a child into a world that could end again. It's scary. The world almost ended. But it didn't. We survived. We rebuilt. We learned. Did we, though? Did we really learn? He pulled me close, his arms warm around me. I have to believe we did. I have to believe that next time, if there is a next time, people will prepare better. Help each other more. Be kinder. That's optimistic. Someone has to be. Might as well be me. I laughed, leaning into him. I suppose someone does. Besides, he continued, our kid will have you as a mom. Which means they'll be prepared for anything. You'll teach them to stockpile supplies and reinforce doors. And they'll have you as a dad. Which means they'll grow up believing in helping others, in being kind, even when it's hard. Sounds like a good combination. Preparedness and compassion. Yeah, I agreed, my hand drifting to my stomach. It really does. We stood there watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, his arms around me, new life growing inside me. I'd died once, killed by the very people I'd tried to help. I'd come back and sought revenge, had watched them suffer with satisfaction. But in the end, I'd found something better than revenge. I'd found that you could be both prepared and kind. Could protect yourself and help others. Could remember the worst of humanity while still believing in the best of it. I'd found Mitchell, who showed me that love wasn't weakness. That trusting again didn't make you stupid. That healing was possible even after betrayal. I'd found redemption, not by forgetting what happened, but by choosing to be better than the circumstances that broke me. I'd learned that survival wasn't just about stockpiling supplies and building walls. It was about maintaining your humanity in the face of horror. About choosing kindness even after you'd seen cruelty. About holding on to hope even when the world went dark. And maybe most importantly, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't making others suffer. It's surviving. Thriving. Refusing to let trauma turn you into something you're not. It's choosing to live well, love deeply, and build a future instead of dwelling in the past. As Mitchell kissed my forehead and I watched the sunset over the city that had almost destroyed us, I realized something. I'd been given a second chance at life, and I'd nearly wasted it on revenge. But I'd caught myself just in time. This time, I would use my second chance to actually live. To love. To hope. To be the person I wanted to be, not the person pain had tried to make me. And that, I realized, was the ultimate victory. The end.